Albury's Doctors Point is uniquely located at the end of Eastern Hill in the embrace of the Murray River as it sweeps around from Mungabareena to Gateway Island. We interviewed Ann McAuley about her family's experience of Doctors Point over the 3 decades they have lived there. This is her story.
The Development Corporation in the late 70s, early 80s was set up because of decentralisation. The federal government wanted to have regional growth areas. So they went around in this particular area buying up farming land to then create subdivisions. Subdivisions that would be sort of larger land lots where they could get the landowners to maintain the land and also have a really good lifestyle. These were actually called environmental blocks, and that's what they're labelled as in the Albury City Council. They're larger blocks where we didn't have septic, there was no gas, we didn't have sewage probably, there was no gas, and we did have town water, and the town water has been fabulous. The allotments of land in the subdivisions were actually auctioned off, and different real estate agents were given the opportunity to hold the auction. And this particular block was in the 3rd lot of auctions, and at that time it was actually in the 1984 it was, and it was a little bit of a recession, and nobody was looking to buy blocks of land really, except for people that wanted a larger block away from noxious weeds, which I call privet. So it was set up down here on the road. It had all been developed, planned out into larger block sizes and smaller block sizes, a big variety all along Murray View Road. And in the middle of the road they set up the auction and the lots were put up. And in fact, at this stage there was only, for our auction, only one block right down the end sold, and it sold straight away. And then all of the others were passed in. But my husband had bid on the last 2 blocks. So at the end of the auction they said, you know, would you pay the reserve price? And of course we said yes. And it's been just fabulous. We do have the responsibility of maintaining the land up higher. It is 5 acres. There were lots and lots of blackberries. Absolutely thick with blackberry up the top, but goats made short work of that over several years. And now, well, my husband maintains, he rides his ride-on mower right around the boundary before summer, so that in case of bushfires, you know, we've got some protection. And we do actually have a CFU, Community Fire Unit, down the end of the road, and we've got 12 people in it, which is a good representation of the people along this road. Doctors Point does look out over Victoria. We look towards Huon Hill, right on the Victorian side. It came about being called Doctors Point because the very first person to own land here was related to the Mitchells, who had a lot of land on the Victorian side, and the first doctor married into the Mitchell family, and they had a block just over the back. And when they were doing the blocks, it was the auction before we bought the block here. When they were auctioning it off, they did mention that that was one of the blocks was the original doctor's homestead, and the builder building on that block found the cellar to the old homestead, just beautifully laid out, the bricks, the stones just perfect. So yes, here we look across the Murray River to the Victorian side. Well, we've got a lot of bird species here, lots, from the very small ones, the little firetails that go around in big numbers, 20 or so in a group, going across the lawns. The little blue wrens who are very inquisitive and come right up and in fact dirty all my windows as they fight themselves. We have beautiful shrike thrushes, grey shrike thrush, a lovely call, a larger bird that nests around quite close to the house. We also have lots and lots of wattle birds, the dollar bird, the gang with its creaky call, lots of king parrots, going up to the bigger ones, lots and lots of kookaburras, magpies, very friendly magpies here, they never swoop, a beautiful friendly family, come back year after year with their little ones, willy wagtails, kingfishers. Oh look, honestly, we've got lots and lots of birds here. It's a beautiful spot for birds. We get the river birds and we also get birds from over the hill. When it floods here, the water comes down from the Hume Dam and past waterworks, and as it comes around the corner of Mungabareena, it spreads out into Victoria. The Victorian side is all flat and the water can go for a big distance over that way. There has been a levee built here because originally South Albury used to flood every time there was a flood as well. And to stop that occurring, they put in a levee bank that ends just where Shoeback Street basically comes in to Doctors Point Road. When it is a big flood, in fact it can go right over the Norm's Lagoon, which is a little lagoon down here, right across the road. Now I think the road was originally meant to be the levee bank, and it is up higher and there's lagoons on either side, but the big floods take the road out completely as well. We've recently had lots of rain and recently had a flood here, and it was, I think, only 6 days that the road was closed. It's been blocked off the Mungabareena end and the Doctors Point end, and we were warned. SES came around, groups, and they spoke to us, warned us that it could happen and advised us that if we wanted to get out we were to take a car and leave it up in East Street. And in fact, over that time, Murray View Road had lots of cars here during the daytime from the people further away along Doctors Point that had to drive up to here, then walk out along the path up to East Street to collect their other car. In 1984, when we bought this block from the Development Corporation, there were 2 trees on the block down the bottom, 2 big box trees that are still here, lovely big trees, no other trees whatsoever, until you got right up near the top, and then there were stringy barks, a couple of boxes and a few gums, and lots of that lovely prickly wattle. Well, we bought the land through the Development Corporation, and one of the requirements was that you had to have a plan for planting out natives. And they had the natives at the Development Corporation nursery, and they were given to us. And we had at least 100. We could choose what we wanted. We had to put in a plan to the Development Corporation showing where on the block we were going to put different species, and so we did. I was very lucky because Les Langford, the ex-mayor, lived up the top, and he'd been there earlier, and he was my dentist. And he said when he did the plan, he got someone to help him, and really the best thing that he did in planting on his block was the little grove of spotted gums. Now Les also did a lovely drive of claret ash, but the spotted gums took my fancy, and we planted them over one side, a whole grove. We only planted 6 and they all took, which was really good. We planted about 12 lemon-scented gums down the front, and originally they looked fantastic, but about 4 of them There were 5 on the front lawn and some up the drive, but 4 of them on the front lawn for some reason didn't thrive. They did at first, they were fantastic, and then they didn't, so they had to go. And we've only got 1 there now, but it just looks stunning. In the middle, you know how they get that beautiful white bark and they branch out. We had lots of grevilleas and bottlebrush, and one of the best things they did was, it wasn't vegetation endemic to this area, it was anywhere in Australia, and they had waratahs. Well, I got some waratahs and I've still got them. Well, these are little babies from the original couple, but they are just so beautiful. They took off beautifully. Really, the bonus of having that free plant, all those free plants, was fantastic. Little tubes, just what was needed. And when you've got a whole lot to look after, that becomes your focus, and you look after all the little ones, and then they get to the stage where you don't need to do anything except enjoy them. So yes, it was badly in need of maintenance. It had been used as on agistment to horses and things like that. So there was very little, there was no new growth. When the horses came off, right up the top, we got a stringy bark forest. They were about 2 feet apart, you know, half a metre, a bit more, and all of them, there were hundreds of them over one side. Now they all took off, and then later on, really tall, only about so big, they all got up that tall, and then some of them started falling over. Some of them taken off really big and beautiful. So it was really thick with them, but they've sorted out which ones are going to be the survivors. Doctors Point is a close-knit community, particularly Murray View Road. When we first came here, people were about the same age. They had young children, and we had a street party. Anybody was welcome. Things were put in your mailbox. And at the end of Murray View Road, it's just a closed little, you turn around and come back again. It's not really a road. It used to be called Murray View Drive, and that's what it was. We had barbecue set up there, and we'd all get together at the end of the year, a Christmas party. Really, really good. And we knew one another. Then later on, Claire Douglas was living down there, and she wasn't actually in Doctors Point, just up off East Street, but the East Street Gully, Devil's Glen, was badly overgrown with privet and blackberry and things, and Claire has always been very community minded, and she organised a land care group where we all went up and cut things down and poisoned them and planted new things. Then since then, we sort of, anything happens in the street, we walk up and down. We know all the other people, and we've got a community fire unit down the end that Brett Nicholson has organised. Really, really good. Well, you have to update twice a year, you have to do your things, and we've even been called into action when there was a fire down off Doctors Point Road at the bottom of Devil's Glen. We were called in and had to set things up. During the 30 odd years that we've been here, there have been a couple of fires. A particularly bad one, on Boxing Day it must have been, because our whole family was down in Melbourne at the Boxing Day test. And we got a message, oh, there's a fire. But fortunately that one passed over. We've had other ones where in the olden days there wasn't as much occupational health and safety, and while the fire crew was up there, I know that Joan next door prepared sandwiches and tea and took it up to them. And in fact, I can only really remember 3 fires that have been here in that time. The worst one was obviously when we were away. There have been fires in Mungabareena, where the smoke here has really worried us, but not nothing along the ridge, just those 2 times along the ridge and once down there. So really we've been fairly lucky. When we came here, our family was very young. In fact, money was really tight and we lived with Cole's parents over in Heath Street for the year that the house was being built, because we didn't have enough to pay for the block plus the building. We moved here when my girls, twin daughters, were 2 and my son was 5, and they just loved it. Mari Montgomery has a lovely story of walking down the road, seeing the girls in their gumboots, nothing else, their gumboots, running around, having fun at the front of the block. And that was a good spot because with little tricycles, you could actually go down a reasonably steepish slope, but you would stop before you hit the fence. And that was a really good little spot for playing. The kids grew up making cubby houses in different spots. In fact, one of their favourite cubby houses was in the blackberries. Amazing. Kids don't seem to mind burrowing out little bits and making passages through the blackberries, and incredible. With their cousins, they would play here on a trampoline with water. Remember the old trampolines that didn't, let the water puddle, didn't let the water go straight through. They really loved the environment here, cubbies, everything, walking over the hill. It's an outdoor sort of living place. You don't spend much time inside. And now the kids have come back, having gone away to uni and been away with jobs for several years. One daughter, her husband, and their 2 children have come back, and we are just so delighted to have grandchildren here. The grandkids love it. They play in the garden, hide things, climb up the trees. They really love climbing trees. No one has fallen out yet. We've got a swing in the front garden, a tyre swing that Cole had right up the block when the kids were little. Now for the grandkids, it's down off the big gum tree that wasn't there, the lemon-scented gum. So yes, it's such a beautiful spot for environmental living. We love it. I'm not going to move in a hurry.